Every one of us, in our own way, has a deep need for connectedness with other human beings. And then in relatively recent human history, boom, here comes the internet and mobile phones and Twitter. I think there's a solvable problem, and I'd like to share it with you. The challenge is this. Our schools or our cultures or the organizations that we've come of age in haven't prepared us for some of the revolution that has happened with the internet. Arguably one of the most powerful things that has happened in human history since the Gutenberg printing press. And what we've often given up is something that I'm here to suggest that we take back, which is that conversation is the powerful part of human connectedness when technology is involved. So I want to talk to you about this in kind of three contexts. One about in the context of time, one in the context of being real, and one, well, maybe what an octopus might have to say about your future with human connectedness. I was walking past the Seattle Aquarium, and I figured out that it was almost closing time and decided to go in anyway, and it was like stepping into this temple or shrine of sensory stimulation, darks and lights, shadows, natural light and fluorescent light, all punctuated by the colors of interesting creatures and the occasional whiff of salt water. What few voices were left faded into silence as I turned a corner and found myself in a room entirely alone. Or so I thought. In the center of the room was this column-shaped tank housing a sole occupant, an octopus. And as I approached the tank, I remembered two things from my younger years. One, the way that you connect with something inside of a tank is not by tapping or knocking on the tank, right? And the second, from the world of physics, that the glass in between us and the relative difference in atmospheric pressure and composition of our relative worlds would kind of distort or refract differently. We would not see each other in a perfect sense. And so I just decided I was going to walk up and apply pressure, just lay my finger on the tank. And I just waited. I thought I saw a little movement. And then, in fact, there was some movement, and this one tentacle comes out of the tank, just a single tentacle, and reaches across and touches my finger on the other side of the glass. I just waited. The inexpressible emotion might be called joy, but this octopus kind of seemed to be connecting with me. And after a little bit, the rest of the octopus came out of its little cave, closed the distance, and came right up to the glass. And changed color, flushing this deep purplish red. In all of this, I hadn't noticed someone else walk into the room. An aquarium worker who was coming around to tell everybody it was time to go. But when she spoke in this really soft tone of voice so as to, not interrupt the holiness of the moment. And she said, they turn that color as a sign of affection. The glass is a bit like the technology we communicate through. It changes how we see each other and how we connect. But it doesn't mean that we can't see each other or we can't connect. See, one of the challenges and one of the opportunities with the internet is that it's open and we can do anything we want. And to be sure, now any one of us can communicate and connect and create and share. But in the process of publication, sometimes we've abdicated the conversation that is critical to human connectedness. Let me share with you why I think it's important that we take back the conversation with what's coming in the future. And then a few things to do about it. At least 3 trends are converging right now in a superstorm that has little or no historical precedent in human history. One is mobility. Mobile phones invade technologically invade every moment of our lives. And I would say that it invades every waking moment of our lives, but did you know that 44% of adults in all age groups sleep with their phones? Pew Internet Research, October 2014. And yes, for millennials, that is almost double. How about the channels of communication? Just like in our lifetimes, we went from very few television stations to many hundreds of television stations. Do you know that there are now 1.5 million apps for smartphones and for content and conversation? Of the 10 most used apps globally on smartphones, 6 of the 10 of them are messenger-style apps, meaning we are finding new ways to connect. But the explosion of options that we have available to us is overwhelming. The average smartphone has 43 apps installed. How about content? For most of human history, ideas have been scarce. Doesn't mean we haven't had them. They haven't been so shareable, right? And there was a time when paper or books were the domain of the wealthy. And yet, in very recent history, we've tipped from scarcity to abundance to, dare I say, overwhelm. 90% of all the data in all of human history has been created in the last 2 years. And hear me correctly, data, information, knowledge, wisdom, and learning are not exactly the same thing. But we all kind of get how all of these things are coming together, and many of us have been thrown for a loop. And even if that's not you, it's the people that you are attempting to reach and teach and lead and cut through the noise with every day. So what do we do about it? I think we take back the conversation. Being real in real time is now something that we can do in a manner that is more robust than it's ever been. And as I started thinking about how is it that we do this, how do we connect with people over the web or whichever app you happen to be using, how do we do this? And I came to like 3 qualities of this real-time connectedness that I want to share with you in the words agility, inquiry, and empathy. Agility is our just ability to change the channel. But I want you to think about it kind of like a neighborhood. See, when location is involved, we go to the coffee shop, and then we go to the office, and then we go to church, and then we go to a birthday party. And every one of those kind of have their own style and their own culture, their own etiquette. And we're only in one place at a time. But now online, it's not speed of travel, it's the speed of thought when we can be in this video conference and then into this enterprise social collaboration network and then onto Twitter and then somewhere else. And oftentimes, one of the answers has been publication and automation. But I think our agility is to still be present of mind in one place at a time. We just have the agility to change from one to the next, which is really 2 things. One is being intentional, and one is growing comfortable with being uncomfortable. Most of history, we've learned it, and then we go do it. And now we have to figure it out as we do it, because there's no longer, with 1.5 million apps, there's no longer a way to stay up on all of it. If you're feeling a little overwhelmed, it's okay. Inquiry is the ability to ask a question in real time. If we went to lunch and I did all of the talking, you'd think I was a pretty lame lunch date. Right? And yet, when it comes to the web and blogs and social media, and dare I say even some of the things that we do in our classrooms, one of our challenges is that we do a lot of talking at instead of talking with. Right? You remember that the word education and the verb educe come from the same Latin root meaning to lead or draw out. Doesn't mean pound more stuff in. Empathy. If there's a big complaint when we think about what we lose in the in-person experience to how does authenticity and relationship and connection form in virtual relationships, it tends to be around missing some of the cues and clues that we're all familiar with because of what we grew up with. I see you. We're in the same space. I get your power posture. But when we move online, it doesn't mean that it isn't there. It just means it's a different set of cues and clues. Call it your virtual body language. Starting to pay attention to how someone shares things, the content that they share, the frequency with which they share, your ability to ask them a question and sense how they respond. We've communicated emotion in writing for a lot of years. Now we can do it on Twitter. That doesn't make Twitter bad. It just makes how we use it rethink how we approach it. See, we can't go to the octopus. I should say, the octopus can't come to us. We've got to go to the octopus. We've got a world of people that need to be reached and taught and led. And as leaders, we've got a great opportunity to do that. But I don't think that happens when we shrink from technology. I think it's when we embrace technology as part of, not the answer to, but part of how we actually connect with people. And you may not actually be going to an octopus, but you do have people that you reach and teach and lead every day who need you to draw them out of their social media shells. Because in fact, we can be just real if we choose to on a social media network as we can on the telephone or in a letter. And it might be that we don't know exactly the glass is going to refract how we see each other, and I sure as heck didn't know what the octopus meant when the octopus turned all red. But it very well might mean that you can figure out how to be curious and empathetic in a way that says, I've never really turned on my webcam in this video conference. I don't know exactly how we collaborate with this enterprise social network. My students are on Instagram, and I haven't been on Instagram, but maybe what if I showed up there and just started listening in? Every one of us wants and needs human connectedness. But as leaders, do we wait for them to do it, or do we step into it? Go into a new virtual neighborhood, ask a question, listen, observe. Your awesomeness has more potential now than ever before in human history to be amplified and to have reach. But that doesn't happen when we connect to technology. It happens when we're agile and curious and empathetic enough to connect through it. Reclaim the soul of human connectedness. Reclaim the role of being real in real time. Take back the conversation.